So today we need to talk about something pretty serious. It's a story that sits right at the corner of your personal finances, your trust in the government, and even our national security. And look, this isn't just some technical glitch or a bit of bureaucratic red tape. This is something with real, permanent consequences for millions of people, and we really need to dig in and understand how it all went down.
Here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the 90-year promise that the Social Security Administration was built on. Then, we'll get into the whistleblower's warning that first signaled something was deeply wrong. We're going to unpack why the data that was exposed is so uniquely dangerous, look at the absolute breach of trust that followed, and then most importantly, we'll finish with what all of this really means for you.
Before we dive in, I want you to really stop and think about this question. Really think about it. In this world of constant data sharing, do you actually feel like your most personal, most fundamental information is secure? Or do you get that sinking feeling that it's just out there, always at risk? It's a heavy thought, and it's right at the heart of everything we're about to explore.
To really get why this breach is such a big deal, we have to start at the beginning. We have to talk about the foundation it completely cracked, nearly a century of trust in one of the most important institutions in the country.
For more than 90 years, the Social Security Administration, the SSA, has been an absolute bedrock. People might grumble about the system, but deep down, there was a fundamental trust that it would protect their most sensitive information. And that trust is so crucial. It's like the invisible glue that holds our modern lives together. Getting a bank loan, filing taxes, accessing healthcare, getting your benefits, every single one of those things depends on the integrity of the data held by the SSA. For a long time, it was considered the gold standard for data security in government.
But this is where that foundation of trust started to get some serious cracks. It all began with the creation of a brand new government entity, and one official inside the SSA who saw what was happening and decided he had to speak up.
So here's the play-by-play. Back in 2025, a new agency gets formed called the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. And hey, on paper, it sounds great. Modernize old systems, cut waste, save the taxpayers some money. But then, things start to go sideways. In late 2025, the SSA's own chief data officer, a man named Chuck Bourhees, files a formal whistleblower complaint, raising some incredibly serious alarms. And it didn't take long. By January of the next year, the Department of Justice quietly admitted, Social Security data had been shared improperly. And the details in that warning were just shocking. We are not talking about minor slip-ups here. Bourhees alleged that DOGE employees were just going into Social Security databases without proper access, that they were blowing right past court-ordered limits on what they could see. And here's the kicker. They were moving this incredibly sensitive data into outside, unapproved, totally unmonitored cloud systems. Think about that. Services like Cloudflare reportedly being used completely outside of the SSA's strict security protocols. It was like creating a digital black box where nobody could be sure who was looking at the data or what they were doing with it.
So, what was the initial public response to these bombshell allegations? Well, you can probably guess, a flat-out denial. The administration came out and said, no data was compromised, nothing to worry about here. It was the standard playbook, right? Downplay it, deny it, and reassure everyone. And for a lot of people, the story probably just ended there. But as we know now, that was nowhere near the full truth.
And this is where we get to the absolute core of the problem. This is why this isn't just another story about a data leak. We have to talk about the unique and frankly terrifying nature of the information that got exposed.
The whistleblower, Chuck Bourhees, used a very specific, very powerful word to describe this data. He called it immutable. What does that mean? It means it's data that cannot be changed. Ever. It's your date of birth, your place of birth, your parents' names. It's your entire documented work history, your citizenship status. This is the bedrock data that defines who you are to the government. It follows you from cradle to grave. And once that kind of information is out, it's out forever. There's no getting it back.
This is the point I really need you to get. We've all become kind of numb to hearing about data breaches, but this is a whole different beast. Look, if your credit card number gets stolen, it's a massive headache for sure, but there's a solution, right? You call the bank, you cancel the card, they send you a new one with a new number, and that immediate threat is over. It's contained. But you can't cancel your date of birth. You can't call up the government and ask for a new work history. With immutable data, there is no reset button. The risk is permanent.
And once that data is in the wrong hands, you can see this devastating domino effect it kicks off. It starts with your social security number and that core data. From there, a criminal can open fraudulent loans in your name, just destroying your credit. They can file fake medical claims, messing up your health records for years. They can even get your retirement or disability benefits redirected to them. This isn't a one-time problem you fix. It's an identity that's compromised for years, maybe even for the rest of your life, forcing you to constantly prove that you are who you say you are.
So, as you can imagine, the revelation that this immutable data was exposed, well, it unleashed a massive political and public fallout. This struck right at the heart of that fragile trust between citizens and their government. Lawmakers were, of course, horrified. Senator Chuck Schumer immediately zeroed in on the massive financial cost, warning that this one breach could open the door to identity theft on a scale costing the economy billions and billions of dollars. He understood this wasn't just about a few people having a bad day, it was a systemic threat to our economy.
Representative John Larson put it in even stronger terms. He called it the most reckless breach of public trust in the entire 90-year history of Social Security. That statement really captures that deep sense of institutional betrayal, the feeling that this sacred promise to protect our most private information had just been carelessly thrown away. And the whistleblower himself, Chuck Bourhees, he pointed out that the danger goes way beyond just Social Security. He warned that if this data was downloaded, and let's be honest, no one can say for sure that it wasn't, it basically becomes a master key for committing fraud across every single government system. He actually called the dataset a strategic intelligence asset. In the wrong hands, it's not just a tool for crooks, it's a weapon. And that brings us to the national security side of this whole mess. It was reported that an employee connected to DOGE signed a voter data agreement with an outside political advocacy group. Now, to be clear, that doesn't prove Social Security data was used for politics, but it raises an extremely scary question. Could it be? Just the possibility that this foundational identity data could be weaponized for political gain takes us from a data breach to a very real national security concern.
Okay, so after going through the history, the breach, and all the fallout, I know this can feel pretty overwhelming. So let's pivot now to the most important part. What does this actually mean for you right now? And what can you do?
The first and most important thing I can tell you is this. Don't panic. Panic never leads to good decisions. Instead, what's required now is vigilance. We're just entering a new normal where being aware, being watchful is truly our best and strongest defense. So here it is, your personal action plan. First, get in the habit of regularly monitoring your credit reports. Second, log into the Social Security website and carefully check your statements and earnings records. Make sure they're accurate. Third, become relentlessly skeptical. Any unexpected call, text, or email asking for personal info, just assume it's a scam. Fourth, if you see any inconsistency, no matter how small, report it immediately. And finally, on a bigger level, we all need to understand the lesson here. Modernizing government is a good goal, but that Silicon Valley mindset of move fast and break things, well, it can be absolutely catastrophic when you apply it to the systems that protect our most permanent data. And all of this leaves us with one last critical question. In our collective rush to be more efficient, to modernize everything, what are we as a society truly willing to risk? At the end of the day, Social Security is so much more than a number on a budget sheet. It's a promise made across generations. And protecting the data behind that promise is every bit as important as funding the benefits themselves. If we want that trust to hold, we simply cannot ignore the lessons from this moment. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Be vigilant and be safe out there.